You're listening to the most captivating podcast in iTunes. That's right, the Elite Man Podcast, where we turn average men into elite men every day. We interview the very best experts from the lifestyle, health, fitness, social, and even entrepreneurial worlds. And with their help, we give you some of the best advice on the planet. Subscribe now if you haven't already and enjoy the show. And oh yeah, if you really enjoy it, leave us a review. On today's episode number 273, entitled, How to Unlock the True Power and Possibility in Your Life by Tapping into Your Hidden Potential, I chat with Panache Desai. Panache Desai is a spiritual thought leader, teacher of life mastery and personal development, vibrational catalyst, author, and inspirational speaker. In today's episode, Panache talks about his new book and the profound concept that you are enough. He talks about unlocking your true potential by reprogramming your subconscious mind and getting over past traumas and failures that have hindered your success and happiness today. Panache also talks about mastering your feelings and emotions, not from a mental technique or process, but from an internal one, embracing your heart and soul. If you're wondering how to take control of your emotions, feelings, success, and life, check this episode out now. You are going to love it. Listen, guys, here's the God's honest truth. We're living in a chaotic time. You already know this. However, what you may not already know is that we're also living in a censorship time. A lot of good information is being suppressed. A lot of good information is being censored. You can look no further than the podcast episode we dropped several weeks back about the COVID-19 pandemic. That podcast episode was actually taken down in Spotify and a number of other platforms because they didn't like the information that we were talking about. Now, we only cover fair and balanced information on this show and try to give you a good holistic perspective on helping yourself, helping your family, and helping your loved ones. But for some reason, that information just doesn't align with some of the mainstream authorities out there who don't like that type of information. They don't like for you to be in charge of your health. They don't like for you to be in charge of your family's health. And for whatever reason, they try to suppress it. Now, I'm all about being an open book. I'm all about being fair, and I'm all about hearing all sides of a solution to a potential problem. But what I do hate most in life is being censored and having my opinion censored when I know I'm being fair and balanced. And that is one thing that honestly pisses me off, probably more than anything. And so with that information, I want you guys to sign up for the email list if you haven't done that. Make sure you go to elitemanmagazine.com/newsletter and sign up today, because no matter who censors us, all the information that you need is always going to be delivered through the email. We're always going to get the information, all the podcasts out to you. So if one platform goes down, we're always going to have the main platform at Elite Man Magazine. We're going to have the links to give you the episodes that you need. elitemanmagazine.com/newsletter is the number one place to sign up today, so you don't miss any of our episodes going forward. If they try to pull us down again, I guarantee you we will come back up and we will have those episodes ready for you. You may have even missed that original episode on COVID-19 if you listen to, say, Spotify or another platform that got taken down. But whatever the case, make sure you sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss anything else. Whether that's our YouTube videos, whether that's our podcasts, whether that's articles, whatever else, whatever information that you need will be delivered to you in your email address when you sign up for the Elite Man newsletter. So make sure you sign up for that now. Also, on that same token, you might as well follow us across the board. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you haven't done that yet. Follow me on Instagram at Justin Stenstrom if you haven't done that yet. Follow me on Facebook at Justin Stenstrom if you haven't done that yet. And join the Facebook group as well, the Elite Man Mastermind, if you haven't done that yet. Follow us across the board on all things, because one platform may take us down, but another platform is definitely going to have us. And if all the platforms decide to come together one day and ban all of our content, guess what? We're still going to find a way to get you that information that you need. The best way to get that information, though, is to join the newsletter, elitemanmagazine.com/newsletter today. All right, guys, we're live. It's Justin Stenstrom from Elite Man Magazine, and my guest today is Panache Desai, the author of the book, You Are Enough. Panache, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks, bro. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for today's episode, man. I mentioned to you I haven't gotten a chance yet to read the book, although with all this time we have on our hands, I'm sure I'm going to get through it in the next couple days or so. But it's a really interesting topic, the concept of the book, and also what we're going to discuss today, and that is basically that the misconception that you are not enough, and the fact that you really are enough, and how to go about sort of having that mindset and implementing those types of attitudes into your life. Can you just take a moment, though, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, and just talk about what it is you do in general besides just writing this book? What other kind of work do you do right now?
So what I do is actually mentor 7 people personally that have multinational businesses or global give backs that they can leverage to create change in the world. I also work with people, not just in a personal development capacity, but also a spiritual development capacity. And write books, create programs, and create content that uplifts and inspires. And the whole premise is basically that until we change our energy, we can't change our lives. So as long as we're living in fear, lack, and scarcity or survival, we can't access the fullness of who we are and demonstrate it for the world to see.
Well, so what are some of your background teachings and philosophies? Like, how did you come about becoming this teacher that you are today, writing these books, mentoring these people? What are some of the trainings that you've had in the past?
So my journey literally went from the womb to the meditation room. I was born into a spiritual family, meditators. They'd met with saints and sages in India for multiple generations. And for the first 5 years of my life, I was raised by my grandmother. And she would pray, she'd engage in devotional worship, she'd chant mantras. And this was kind of the environment that I was raised in. And of course, we all know now that what we do in the first 7 years of our lives kind of shapes us for the remainder, right? Until we have some kind of awakening and start to deal with some of that unconscious programming and content that we've absorbed. So for me, this was all kind of laid out for me. And even though it was laid out for me, I just thought it was weird. I was feeling things that I couldn't explain to people. I knew things about people that I didn't want to know. And people were having experiences around me of just literally transforming. I remember some instances as a kid where I'd just be hanging out and somebody, random stranger, would come and sit next to me and just start telling me the whole life story. And within a few minutes, they'd start accessing all the emotion that they had around it. And when they got up, they would be sparkly, which is how I would describe it as a kid. Now I know what's going on. We basically, on a subconscious level, are being imprinted all the time. The subconscious mind is always fully active. And so for me, I've been able to help people liberate all of that content. So in India, we call these imprints samskaras. And the other part of it is that, as human beings, we get stuck in the past because of all this heightened memory of emotion that we haven't addressed. And so I've really pioneered this whole change your energy, change your life movement. Spoke to Oprah about it. We really coined that term. And subsequently from that was able to then bring people through this platform of understanding that everything's energy. If you really want to understand the universe, think of it in terms of vibration and frequency. And specifically what we have to do is free ourselves of survival. And so I've been working with people, organizations, companies from all over the world in helping them understand how they can leverage this gift and how they can use it to, further contribute to their creativity, to optimize their businesses, and to leave some kind of a lasting legacy that impacts the world. And so it all began in that meditation room in East London with my grandmother. And from there, it has evolved into a global movement that spans millions of people all over the world.
Nice. Dude, I knew this was going to be a fascinating interview. I can already tell. This isn't my kind of topic. And the thing I'm most interested at this point in my life right now is all of the stuff you just mentioned, energy and subconscious mind, unconscious programming, imprints, scarring of the past, and getting over that stuff. Do you think that you have some type of special gift where you mentioned that you were at a very young age, people were just coming up, you were sensing different things, like you were knowing things about people you couldn't even tell or describe or why it was coming up. And then also they were just like telling you their whole story, their whole life story, and then they'd go away, walk away like feeling incredible. Do you think you have a special gift?
I don't think it's a special gift. I think it's a gift that we all have. I just think that my gift wasn't conditioned out of me. Okay. I think that my grandmother allowed me to be who I was, so while other kids were, being kind of regimented into conformity, I was in this environment just kind of marinating in all of this prayer and devotion and worship. And so spirituality for me is as natural as Michael Jordan dunking a basketball, for that reason, so I don't think it's a special gift. I think we all have a gift for empathy. I think we all have a gift for compassion. I think we all have a gift through which we get to support others in evolving and moving beyond their current circumstance. What's gotten in the way is that people are so focused externally that they've forgotten that, the greatest final frontier or possibility exists within us. And so what differentiates me from people is that I've always focused on what's inside of me. In states of oneness and connection, we are all the same. What's happening in the world is a reflection of you. And so I remember my earliest memories of being acutely aware of the fact that everything in my life was responding to how I was feeling. So I began to understand kind of the hidden dimension of reality and the nature of reality beyond the mind. And so I think that we all have this capacity. I think we can all develop it. I just think that right now, where we are, the mind has become such a dominant component, especially in the transformational and personal development space. It's all about strategies and all about goal setting and, visualization and even law of attraction. These different things that have a vibrational component have all become very mental. And what we're missing out on is the fact that we are a being, that we have this energy, this vibrational field that we are, and that's the truth of who we are. We have a mind, but we're not our mind. We have emotions, but we're not our emotions. We have a body, but the body's on consignment. And so when we begin to shift our point of identification away from the manifest material world, that means everything that you can see and perceive right now through the five senses, and you begin to explore what's going on inside of you, you begin to uncover and discover the truth. And then you can access not just this ability to facilitate transformation in millions of people, you can uncover every gift and every ability that you have in there.
What kind of gifts are you talking about? Any gift, any ability that you have inside? Like what?
I think that we all have the ability to sense what's going on in a geographical location. I think we all have the ability to establish a connection with somebody that we love to the point where we can think of that person and they'll give us a call. We all have the ability to experience heightened synchronicity in our lives. We all have the ability to eliminate reactivity and everything that's based in survival inside of us. We all have the ability to serve as a tuning fork for others. So the degree to which we've dealt with what's inside of us, all of that unconscious content, is the degree to which we become a place of possibility for others. So every single one of you that's listening to this right now is a bridge for another human being. And all of these experiences you've had in your life, when they're fully embraced, become points of resolution for other people. And simply by being in your presence, all of these things that they've gone through begin to transform. So we don't realize our power because we're not utilizing the full manifestation of our consciousness, right? But there's so much that we have access to that's dormant inside of us. And I feel like we're at a tipping point. I feel like within 3 generations, we're going to be using way more of our capacity. We're going to realize that we're completely connected to everything, that everything's interconnected. Nothing happens in isolation. And when we get to that point, that's when we'll start to really demonstrate our power as human beings.
By 3 generations, you mean like 3 decades or longer than that?
I think it's going to be longer than 3 decades. Yeah.
So 3 lifetimes of people.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Because by then we'll have worked out all of this survival energy that's been undermining us, right? So when you think about it, right now, what's being activated in everybody all over the world is everything at the level of survival. We've got this virus coming at us that's an unknown, that's activating everything that's dormant inside of us at the level of physical health and well-being. We've got the economy doing what it's doing, right? We've got the uncertainty as it relates to job security. We've got this global kind of purging of every form of fear and survival that we have repressed or suppressed inside of us. And the blessing of this time is to welcome that transformation, is to allow ourselves to feel what there is to feel, to understand that the more we're available to be inclusive around every experience, the more it transforms, the more it opens up. And so literally inner observation and acceptance of what is allows us to begin to transform what I've come to call this density, which is just deeply repressed and suppressed emotional content, right, that keeps us trapped in the past. Because really, we don't remember an average day. We just remember the worst day we ever had and the best day we ever had, right? Because it's got heightened emotion associated with it. And so literally when we start to sit still and we start to get present to what's going on and we start to welcome the discomfort of egoic existence and we start to welcome all of this stuff that we've been taught to suppress and repress inside of us, it transforms. And in that transformation, then we're able to become a doorway and a vehicle for every other person in our lives.
How do you get inside yourself, like you mentioned a few moments ago, without being in your head, like getting focused on all the crap that you just mentioned, the survival, the fears, the worrying, the stressing, all that stuff? How do you tap into this sort of special place of consciousness without actually thinking about different things and worrying about and suffering from, all these stresses?
So I think that the big misconception is that we have to quieten the mind or affect some level of transformation at the mind. And what I've discovered actually is that the mind doesn't really have any transformative power, right? The body, the actual physical body, is the storehouse of the unconscious. And when we start to give our body our attention, right? So that means sit still, take some breaths, relax, get calm, join me on one of the global meditations, right? Take the time to disengage from all of your regular activity that serves as a distraction from you feeling what you have to feel inside. The more you can start to turn and train your attention to focus on what's going on inside of you, in your body, the more you'll begin to all of a sudden uncover all of this emotion that's there. You'll be able to uncover all of this trapped potential that's there and liberate it. So for me, becoming aware of oneself or observing oneself without judgment is the highest form of spiritual practice. It's not about sitting in a dark room burning incense, orming your nights away, right? That's wonderful. But what we have to do is be able to deploy this in the field when we're in a meeting, when we're engaged in a high pressure situation, when we're going through something like we're going through right now, and have it work. And one of the most powerful ways that I've found is that the more we've become aware of the fact that we're breathing, live in something that I've come to call living breath awareness, the more we transform our life into a living meditation. The more we're in that state of being, the more we're in a state of flow. And the more we are then open to greater possibilities. Also, through that way of being, we're creating a pathway through which we can experience everything from the past and integrate it. Because the big thing that's missing in most of the transformational work right now is this notion of integration. We're aware of ourselves. Like, we're going to therapy, we're becoming self-aware, right? We understand why we are the way we are. We understand why we've ended up that way, but there's no completion because there's no access to the emotion that we have to access in order for integration to happen. And so I've created something called vibrational transformation, which is basically a methodology through which we become completely self-aware and we're able to self-actualize. And it's through that gift of vibrational transformation that people have been able to go on to just do amazing things all over the world, just on an individual level, on a global level, and really redefine what it means to be successful. Because really the metric of success that we have now is like an empty promise, right? Like, you get there, you're famous, you have money, you do well, you're doing all these things, but it just tastes like ashes in your mouth because there's no fulfillment in it. So to redefine success as peace and to understand that our essential nature is peace is the next evolutionary leap for all of us.
Do you have to, it sounds like it, but I'm not sure if you made this clear, but do you have to tap into the emotions, the feelings surrounding these past, say, stored events in your body that you're trying to get over? Do you have to tap into those emotions again to be able to get over them in the current situation, the present moment?
Yes, you do, because in tapping into the emotion and piercing the emotion, you create the release. And until you go back there and feel the emotion, you can't be free of it, right? So when we think of it this way, like right now, you and I are having a conversation. Most of the people that are listening to this conversation are still trapped in the past. They're not even present. They don't even have a real relationship with themselves, right? And here's why. Because they haven't gone back and dealt with everything from the past at the level of feeling. We don't even know that we have that potential, right? But what we're seeing now is that when we change our energy, all of a sudden we're able to go through neurobiological shifts and epigenetic shifts. That means that literally through our willingness to go back and deal with every emotion from the past that we haven't addressed, we collapse the memory of ourselves so that we can be fully present and fully available now. And that's where all of the potential is. And so a big part of my work has been supporting people in accessing that process, right? In really going back and unwinding everything from the past by embracing these parts of ourselves instead of rejecting them, instead of judging them, instead of denying them the inclusivity that they need and the love that they need. All we have to do is go back and bring them into our hearts and be inclusive of them. Because what people don't realize is that oneness is the ability to hold the shadow and the light equally within oneself. It's not discarding everything that we're ashamed of and everything that we feel guilty about, every perceived mistake that we've made. It's like the doorway to our potential, to our divinity, to that infinite part of us is through our humanity. That's why, it takes so much courage to really transform. That's why so many people that embark on a path of transformation do it solely at the level of the mind, which to me is a very surface level of approaching transformation. They read the books, they go to seminars, they do all the practices, but they're not accessing the very part of themselves that they have to bring about lasting, sustainable change in every area.
So when you go back to these situations, these past events, these past traumas, what does that actually look like, and how are you recalling all of these memories? Like, some people just forget things that, especially when they were younger, like you mentioned earlier, between up to age 7, your subconscious is like downloading all this information. And, people don't even have memories of certain things in their lives that cause them different stress or trauma over the years. How do you go back and access these different things without, even knowing that they're there?
So there's a couple of ways to do that. The first way is that our imagination is an amazing portal and an amazing transformational vehicle. And when we use the power of our imagination to bring resolution into being, the mind actually doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. And so one of the ways that we can do that is to see ourselves at 5 years old, right? To get in touch with that aspect of us. And there are very visceral ways to do that and real ways to do that, where you can literally just close your eyes right now and just see your 5-year-old self in front of you and get in touch with this version of you. And in getting in touch with this version of you, you can begin to very quickly, through interacting with this aspect of you, so you can literally ask this aspect of you questions, you can just embrace this aspect of you, and in doing so, that facilitates the integration. So literally, our imagination is such a powerful transformative tool. So utilizing our imagination is one way. Another way is that I just basically support people in going through it while I'm with them on the phone. So I can kind of tap into what's unresolved and what needs to get finished for them. And we can just expedite the process because I know where to look. And also, I've been doing this long enough now to understand what constitutes that feeling of not being enough, which is really what we have to target. Because it doesn't matter what we've done and how successful and accomplished we've become, at some point we have to address that feeling. Because until we do, we can't receive the love that we really want. We can't have the intimacy that we really desire. Physically, we can't embody the health and vitality that we want. So this feeling of not being enough is the root cause of all of our suffering. Because no matter what we do, we can't overcome that feeling. And so literally, I'll work with people on the phone. I'll work with them, through Zoom, and get them through that process and resolve inside of them what needs to be resolved so that they can move on beyond it.
It kind of sounds similar to, and I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but it kind of sounds like the past life regression hypnosis stuff, where they go back in time, and sometimes, they go back into, say, past lives, if you believe that, or just going back to a time when they were really young, like, say, age 5, and recalling through the subconscious mind some of these old memories that have been forgotten, and, being able to deal with those things and, again, work over them so that you can be comfortable with yourself now or accept yourself now. What are your thoughts on stuff like that?
I love Brian Weiss. Brian wrote Many Lives, Many Masters, and is probably one of the foremost practitioners of past life regression. I think it's a wonderful tool. For me, we don't really need to go into a hypnotic state. We just need to go into a fully conscious state and to be fully aware. And in that state of fully being aware, we're able to access what we need to from this particular incarnation. Because what I've come to discover is that we have everything that we need to deal with inside of us. It's not that we have to search beyond this lifetime into a past life, because even when we're accessing past lives, we're only resolving things from this lifetime. So at that point, it's like the past, the present, and the future are all playing out now. So it's like in this moment, we have access to everything inside of you, right, that we need to access to fundamentally support your self-actualization. And also, the blessing that I have is that I've really discovered that, again, the mind is a great entry point into the subconscious, but the subconscious responds best to energy, vibration, and frequency. And the more we deal with ourselves in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency, the more powerfully we can affect transformation at the level of the subconscious mind. So in India, that happens through a gift called Shaktipat. So I was blessed in the womb by a Shaktipat guru in India. And Shaktipat's like a powerful process of awakening all of this dormant potential inside of us that goes to sleep once survival is introduced into our experience. And I subsequently have discovered through my curiosity and exploration, meeting with other people all over the world, that this phenomenon is what's been happening through me my whole life. And so every Western transformational framework was born of an Eastern mystical practice, right? So the fathers of psychotherapy were fans of Eastern mysticism long before this notion of psychotherapy ever came into being. What we call hypnosis in India, we call yoga nidra, which is basically cultivating this wakeful state, completely relaxed wakeful state where we can directly engage with the subconscious. And so we don't necessarily need to go into past lives or deal with things at the level of past lives. It's a wonderful tool. I love Brian. I love what he's doing. We can address everything now because everything that you have to deal with is inside of you in this moment.
As a reminder, join our newsletter at elitemanmagazine.com/newsletter. There's a lot of crazy things going on, a lot of chaos happening in the world. The one thing I don't want you to miss out on is the incredible information that we provide here at Elite Man Podcast, on the videos, on everything else that we try to give you the best information on. Keep your family safe, keep yourself safe, keep everybody healthy, and don't miss out on any of this information. If somebody just randomly decides to take us down one day, you'll still get it if you're on the newsletter, elitemanmagazine.com/newsletter. As far as the vibrational transformation that you mentioned, is that what we're talking about here, or is that like another technique that you use to tap into some of these things?
So for me, I can accurately tap into what's going on in somebody else because I've been doing this long enough now to know where we have limitations inside of us. Because when I examine the human body, I don't examine it in terms of just what's physically going on. I've realized that everything that's happening on a physical level, right, the level of life and living, and this is true for businesses too, by the way, the founder of a company, that company's culture reflects the consciousness of the founder, right? So if there's a problem in a company, what you have to do is address it in the founder or the current CEO of that business. If you can address that limitation in the CEO of the company, the founder, or the executive team, all of a sudden, everything in the business on an external level gets resolved. Right? And this is true on an individual level for us in life and living, right? Our physical reality is a manifestation of our own state of consciousness. And so vibrational transformation is something that I've cultivated through which I can support people in elevating their energy and expanding their consciousness. And that in turn then expands the outcomes in every area of their lives. So they go from being limited to limitless, basically. That all of a sudden they're stuck at one particular level of consciousness where they can't find a solution, they can't find an answer, to all of a sudden expanding into the totality of who they are, and they're able to do that. And that again happens just through my ability to fully open up to who I am and to facilitate that reminder at the deepest level, which is through presence, which is through connection in the other person that I'm with. And so when everything first happened, I talked about it in kind of the beginning of the book. I had this experience in 2002, 2003, where I just said, all right, if I'm here to be a messenger and I'm here to do something, because I was told this my whole life, like I need to experience who and what God is, because I'm not going to look at a mother who just lost her child and tell her that she's going to be okay unless I've experienced the truth, right? Because I was a very skeptical person. And so I began to undergo this profound kind of transformation. I started to feel all this emotion inside of me. It welled up. I started shaking. All this fear was leaving my body. And once this finished, all of a sudden, everything just became this luminous golden presence beyond anything that I can articulate in words. Like love doesn't even do it justice.
Wow.
And I realized through this experience that this is who we all are. This is where we come from. This is what we go back to. But we as human beings are relating to this infinite presence in our own unique way. And once that experience had kind of landed for me, at that point, I went into like a state of bliss for about 6 months. I wasn't even talking at that time. And people had heard what happened to me. They'd just come and sit with me, and they'd literally just sit with me. And whatever they had going on the surface level of their life would just resolve itself.
Wow. That's incredible. So you basically just had this moment where you like willed it out of yourself to come up and basically show itself, this consciousness, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, whatever people want to describe it as, but you willed it to basically come about in your life and show you that you were on the right path, and then it showed up?
Yeah, because my whole life I'd been told, that I was here to do something. I was here to help people. And I'd reached a point of frustration at that point where I'm just like, okay, if I'm really here to do something, then I have to experience what it is I'm here to do. And in having that experience, all of a sudden, I could see what was happening my whole life, that it was this presence that had been flowing through me, that all of the wisdom, all of the energy, everything that was happening from this place of connection. And that the only difference between myself and others is that I really had never forgotten it. Even when I was going through a hard time in my life, that access to that state of connection had remained. Again, because in my formative years, I was deeply immersed in that spirituality, deeply immersed in that connection. So what comes naturally to me is what we as a collective have yet to remember, that our natural state of being is this infinitely expansive presence of love, that this is really who we are, right? So what's been conditioned out of the majority of people on this planet didn't get conditioned out of me completely. And so I was able to retain access to this truth. And so for me, it's like, okay, great. If I'm here to do something, please show me what this is. Because again, like I had a very hard time reconciling what God was up until that point. Because there's a lot of things that are done in the name of God that are just horrendous. And so, and I was very skeptical, especially being Indian, because, you know, I'd met a lot of gurus and teachers and had various experiences with a lot of gurus and teachers. And, you know, there were some gurus and teachers who were facilitating awakening and were service oriented and were wonderful. And there were other gurus and teachers that were just in this trap, right, of being in that role. And I never wanted any of that. I'm like, listen, whatever it is that I'm here to do, show me. So I literally, through a moment of defiance, allowed what had always wanted to happen my whole life to happen. And it was the most exquisite experience ever.
That's incredible. But how do you, if you say that we all have this in us and we all have, you know, this consciousness, this God within us,
Mm-hmm.
and so many people have forgotten it, is there a way for us to have the same type of experience that you had? Is there a way for us to get this type of thing back in our lives so many of us can have this kind of incredible awakening that you had?
Absolutely. That's basically the age that we're living in now, you know, and in going through everything that we're going through, we're being asked to let go of everything that we don't need and to simplify so that we can come closer to that experience. You see, humanity, the human race is the only species that's living out of harmony with nature, right? So what we're doing is really returning to nature, but we're just doing it in what appears to be a very chaotic way. Right? When you look at the world, it seems to be very chaotic. But out of that chaos is going to be born a permanent state of calm. So we're at the beginning of a 10-year window of time. And how we do that is by being willing to understand that our natural state of being is peace. So I always say to people that if you're feeling anything other than peace, it's not really who you are. You know, just welcome it, just let it wash through you. And there are lots of different entry points. There are 5 main entry points. I wrote about them in the book. The first is to commit to the essential self. And the reason why I use the word commitment is because what we commit to, we give every fiber of our being to, right? So in that moment, I had committed to knowing the truth. I wanted to know the truth, right? If this thing called God exists, show me. And I was fully invested on every level in accessing that truth, or not seeing it and getting on with my life and discounting everything that I had ever been told, because I never take anything on face value. The second thing is then having a commitment to creating a new past, present, and future, right? So many of us are still stuck in the past. Like we're still worried about, you know, what happened in the 80s or the 90s, you know, or the early 2000s, you know, and we're still stuck in all of that. What keeps us stuck in all of that is all of this energy, all of this emotion that's there around that. So we have to take the time to go back and clear all of that out. Then the third thing is to commit to inner peace. Peace for me is the most precious commodity on this planet. I've met people that have accomplished every level of success that you can imagine, and the majority of them are not peaceful. So they can't enjoy any of it. It's almost like they're suffering from their success. They can't enjoy a moment of anything that they have. So we have to commit to this inner peace and let this be the platform of our truth. Because again, that peace is how we feel when we're authentically being ourselves. Everything else is impermanent. Everything else is temporary. Every other emotion and sensation will come and go. But there's a peace inside of us that we can relax into in every moment that anchors us fully in the truth of who we are. Then the fourth thing is to commit to fulfillment. So I've met an individual who's created a huge company in the world, and they did it to prove something about themselves because they didn't believe that they were good enough, right? And the first person they wanted to prove it to was themselves. Then they wanted to prove it to other people around them, right? The only problem is that they can't get off of that hamster wheel of needing to prove it because they can't get over that feeling of not being enough. And so fulfillment and operating from fulfillment is the antidote to this operating from needing to prove something or strive or attain. And when we commit to fulfillment, we're giving ourselves a framework to operate from that's sustainable, right? That's rooted in something deeper internally. And then the last thing is commit to unlimited potential and possibilities, which is my favorite one. Because once we learn how to consciously get beyond ourselves, which is really what I show people how to do, once we learn how to get beyond the conditioned framework of ourselves, the programmed framework of ourselves, that's the reason why we don't believe that we're enough and we don't believe that we're good enough. Once we can get beyond that and get beyond it over and over and over again, not only do we change our brain and engage neuroplasticity, but we shift our biology. And we shift our biology on a genetic level, right? So literally, we're able to finally be a great custodian of all of the faculties that we have. And then from that, of course, every other area of life just exponentially increases because we've finally focused on the one thing that matters, which is ourself, and not in a conceited, egotistical way, but in a loving, nurturing way. Because the world is as we are, and we are only ever as limited as we allow ourselves to be.
What are some of the ways that you go about implementing these 5 rules throughout the day? And is there ever times when you stray from one of these beliefs and kind of mess up or, go against what you're trying to do? And if so, how do you bounce back from that?
So I think the main thing that people need to know is that they're not broken, they don't need healing, they don't need fixing, and that they're not a mistake. And that what they've done to the best of their ability, okay, based on where they were in their development at that time. The reason why people struggle is because when you look back on it, it's like when I look back on myself when I was in my 20s, I didn't know what I know now. I hadn't had the experiences that I've had now. So at that point, I was doing the best that I could to navigate an experience that was scary or to navigate an experience that was overwhelming or whatever the situation was at the time. And so the first thing is that we have to let ourselves off the hook immediately for everything, okay? Everyone who's listening to this, you are love. That's the truth of who you are. You can take that with you for the rest of your life. You are love. And the more you begin to operate from that place of peace and calm, the more all of these innate qualities become available to you. Do we have days where we forget? Yes, but the window of time within which we forget becomes shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. We still feel everything. We still experience every emotion there is to feel. We just know that it's not really who we are, right? It's coming and it's going. We don't, lock our emotions up in a room in the house anymore for 30 years, and think that we're dealing with things, right? We finally start to open up to who we are at the level of feeling. And once we begin to open up to who we are at the level of feeling, that's when the transformation happens. That's because emotions are nothing more than energies in motion, right? So when we shift to the level of emotion, we're liberating all of the trapped potential that we have inside of us. And so life is a journey of remembering that who you are is peace. And if that's the one takeaway that you have, resting in the awareness of your breath, being aware of the fact that you're breathing. I've got people in boardrooms all over the world doing this. I've got athletes doing it. I've got people that you would know in the world doing it. And I've got people that are just wanting a better quality of life doing it. It's called living breath awareness. And the more we rest in the awareness of our breath, the more, again, we live in this flow state, the more we can live in this peak state consistently, right? And it's beyond, like we just float through life. There's grace. And yes, there are moments where we forget. But in those moments where we forget, we're being given an opportunity again to soften, to come back to the truth, to come back to the breath, to come back to the peace that we have inside of us, and then go again from that space. And so just know that every single part of you, the way you've been designed, has been designed perfectly. We've been spending far too much time trying to stop thinking, look better, feel, change on all of these other levels that don't bring lasting change. Right? Where we have to shift is at the level of feeling. And until we shift at the level of feeling, nothing in our life can transform. And so focus on cultivating this inner feeling of peace. Focus on cultivating this inner state of calm and know that that's really who you are. You've been conditioned out of it, but it is your natural state of being. Stop being normal and return to being natural and watch what happens in your life.
What are some of the ways to tap into that feeling of peace, though, that feeling of harmony, especially, in like times like today where it's very chaotic, it's very stressful, or you lose a job, you lose money, you lose a girlfriend, you lose a friendship, a relationship. Like, how did we tap into to those feelings and emotions of feeling good and having that peace, even though there may be chaos in our outside world, in our surrounding world?
So that peace is the foundation of our experience. Everything is happening on the surface of that peace. So let's say you go through a breakup and your girlfriend decides that she wants to break quarantine and go back to her apartment because she can't be with you, right? And you're dealing with the sadness of that or the anger of that. The first thing to do is to recognize that there's nothing wrong with any of those feelings. Okay, we've been literally programmed and conditioned to repress and suppress emotion because we're told that it's not socially acceptable, it's not okay. And the reason why we buy into that is because nobody's ever modeled it consciously to us, right? So the only time that we've seen anger is through volatility and outburst, right, or violence. But anger doesn't have to be expressed in that way. Anger can be experienced internally. So you get a phone call, all of a sudden you're being laid off, you're going to be overwhelmed by emotion. In that moment, come back to the breath, welcome the emotion. Recognize that you're being triggered in that moment to create a pathway that's going to support you in coming into completion. So the first thing is to accept what is, to come into an acceptance of what's happening, okay? To cultivate an awareness of who you are beyond that job. Most people right now are going through a fundamental revision of their lives, and what they're discovering is actually that what's going to make it through this time is what really matters, right? We're being asked to choose our health and well-being and love and connection over survival. And so if you are in the midst of being laid off or your job is downsizing, then know that there is something greater coming for you. There's something better coming for you. And now's the time to bet on yourself and to bet on who you are, right? And to get into that creative pursuit or that creative endeavor, or to find creative ways to begin to generate outside of that job that you probably didn't like in the first place. If a relationship is ending, again, that's just because the relationship has ended, it doesn't mean the love's gone away. The reason why people suffer so much when relationship ends is because they project their love onto the other person, and they think that when the other person goes away, their love's gone away. And that's just not the truth. Everything that we feel comes from inside of us. Because we don't feel like we're good enough in ourselves, the best that we can do is project our love onto another person in order to feel what's inside of us. So what you begin to realize is that the outside world really is like a simulation or an illusion, right? What the modern kind of tech people who go to Burning Man call the simulation, right? The psychonaut explorers, we would call the illusion Maya, but it's all the same thing. The outside manifest world is your opportunity to come into the complete empowerment of who you are and to be the Neo of your reality, literally. And I mean that, right? And this is your opportunity to wake up, right? To realize that you're not the job, you're not the bank account. Like anyone who went to bed, banking on the certainty of their retirement fund when all of this happened is now being fundamentally challenged, right? Because all of that perceived upside that they had is now gone. But what they're not realizing is that they still have Obama money. They're still up from 2016. We're still up, right? But people are living the illusion of what they missed out on, right? So you may have to take a haircut in the way that you live, and you might have to moderate the way that you're living. But that's probably not a bad thing anyway, So get in touch with the simplicity of life. Get in touch with what you really need, and understand that human beings are self-enclosed units of experience, right? No matter what happens outside of you, you've got the capacity inside of you to welcome whatever's going on. So in moments of extended chaos, we can use centering exercises and techniques to where we literally inhale to the count of 4 and exhale to the count of 4. If you need to completely reset the nervous system, breathe into the count of 4, exhale to the count of 8. Okay, and then just come back to resting in the awareness of the breath. And for me, the reason why I created Living Breath Awareness was because I realized that all of these gurus and teachers were giving these mantras and meditation practices to people. But really, for me, the greatest mantra is the breath. It's always there. It's always available. We don't need anybody for it. And becoming aware of our breathing, becoming aware of what's going on, returns us to calm sooner and faster. And so this is a process of peeling away all of the layers of false identification, right? Oh my God, I'm in my relationship. And all of a sudden I'm not in a relationship. Okay, who am I now? Oh my God, I'm my job. And all of a sudden, no, I don't have a job. Okay, who am I now? Right? All of a sudden. So we're peeling back all of these layers of identification to get to what's real and what's true, and understand that what's real and what's true can never be challenged. It never goes away. It's always there. Everything else is impermanent. It's all a part of the illusion. It's all a part of the matrix, right? But what's real is ever present inside of us in every moment. Come back to that, because that's the peace.
So just to finish up on the living breath awareness topic, what does that actually look like? Is that just simply focusing on your breath and forgetting about everything else around you, and especially in the midst of these chaotic times and stressful times, and you're freaking out about something, and you just go back to that breath? Is it as simple as just focusing on your breath, and you do this throughout the day?
Absolutely. Because the more we observe the breath in the moment, the more we're anchored in the present moment, right? So the only thing that's happening in every moment that we can rely on is our breath. It is the one constant that's available until it isn't. And at that point, it doesn't matter anymore, because we're not alive, right? So maybe this, and it's interesting too, because I really looked into this. I'm like, why is it that we have all of this emphasis on breathing? I spent 6 months of my life kind of living like a monk in like a residential retreat center. And there's all this emphasis on the breath. And the funny thing too is that in most wisdom traditions, the word for breath and the word for God are the same word. So then I'm like, okay, well, great. Maybe just being aware of the breath is being aware of God, is being aware of life. And if I'm able to be aware of the fact that I'm breathing, then all of a sudden I'm anchored in the moment. I'm anchored in the present moment. And then I don't have to sit in a dark room and meditate. I can chop the vegetables. I can take the kids to school. I can, take a look at what's happening in the market. I can watch the news. I can engage in emails and Zoom conferences. There's also a state that people access when they're running called the zone. It's all of a sudden, it's like you just feel like you're floating, and that's what this does. It just allows you access into this kind of zone, this flow state. And living breath awareness allows us to operate from connection. And so the simplicity is where the power is, because it's in that simplicity that we're able to access the part of us that's real and true. If we have to jump through hoops and, do 50 different things in order to be peaceful, it's not effective. So I've basically just completely hacked meditation and boiled it down to the simplest possible form that we can to bring people immediate results and an immediate immersion into peace and calm when they need it the most.
Nice. So you actually say that you're focusing on your breath, but you can still do other things. Like you can still watch the news, you can still chop vegetables, you're still doing other things. Are you actually really focusing on the breathing, or are you focusing on both?
You're focusing on the breathing, and then you're engaged in the activity.
Okay.
So you're just basically, so we can do it together right now. We're here, we are having a conversation, but we can all of a sudden start to become aware of the fact that we're breathing. And in just watching each inhalation and exhalation, you're going to experience yourself undergoing a state change. And we're still talking, and we're still engaging in a conversation. We're still being dynamic, but we're just doing it from a different place inside of us.
Yeah.
And so being aware of our breath, or living breath awareness, allows us to access a much deeper state of being internally and to operate from that place all the time. Right? You can do it when you're driving, you can do it when you're chopping vegetables, whatever. I mean, you're basically, the point is that I realized a need for people to be able to meditate with their eyes open while they're engaged in life, right? Because as much as I was raised in a meditation room, I wasn't one for sitting in a dark room, for 20 minutes of my life in order to experience peace, right? Like my connection with myself can't be like a cell phone plan, like nights and weekends, right? Like I have to be able to connect with who I am all the time, right? So I realized that, okay, great. If we just provide people access to living breath awareness through connecting with the breath in every moment, and through observing it, they can still engage in the world. It's just that everything becomes a spiritual practice. Everything becomes a meditation, right? We don't have to all of a sudden set out a formal time in order for meditation to happen. We can relax into the truth that meditation actually is always happening, right? It's a function of awareness and attention. So if our attention is on our breath and we're simply just observing each inhalation and exhalation, all of a sudden we start to relax. We go into a deeper state of being internally. And then you should watch what comes out of you. Then you're in the meeting, all of a sudden, you're not operating from a place of need. You have all the leverage in the world, and you're able to function from a place of calm. And while everyone around you is freaking out and worrying, you're able to operate from a place of calm. And that place of calm is your superpower. The individual who operates from an absence of need has all of the leverage in the world.
That's very interesting, man. Very good point. So do you do any type of other meditation practices still, or is it just this throughout the day, and that is basically enough for you and for your clients?
I'm basically just in living breath awareness all the time. Everybody else is in it all the time. We do formally get together. Right now I'm offering a global call to calm meditation because of everything that's happening in the world, which is just 21 minutes of us getting together and just being together. And it's been great. We have thousands of people from all over the world in the morning, and then tens of thousands who watch it via all the social media outlets and the replay at 1:11 Eastern. And that's been fantastic, because the one thing that I realized that was going to be the most important thing that we could connect to and remember at this time was calm, especially in the midst of all of this upheaval and uncertainty. Why? Because we want to be empowered to respond to life. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want to be in fight or flight, and we don't want to be operating from survival. And so literally advocating on behalf of calm has brought people so much comfort during this time. And what they're going through is super hard. I mean, some families are dealing with having a loved one on a respirator, right? Potentially dealing with the fact that their loved one may transition. But you know what? Taking that time to operate from calm is making all the difference in the world. I've also been working with a lot of doctors and nurses, and they're also letting me know how much of a difference it's made for them. Because the more they're able to operate from a place of calm, instead of this heightened sense of, oh my God, I'm going to get infected with COVID-19, in the midst of their line of duty, is allowing them to gracefully move through their day, and to do so without being overwhelmed by all of the fear, the anxiety, and the panic that often comes along with these crisis situations. And so do it by yourself. Just try it. If you want to learn how to do it, there's a program on the website that you can download, or otherwise just join me, in the mornings, and come and connect, come and get to know yourself. People think that humanity's final frontier is like another planet. We're going to go colonize another planet. We're missing out on the most untapped resource of all, which is ourselves. And we're not focusing on ourselves. We're not focusing on developing a relationship with who we really are. And that self-knowledge has the capacity to carry us through everything. In my book, I talk about the essential self and how we all have that possibility. And in chapter 2, there's this story about this golden Buddha in Thailand that was covered over through the years to protect it, right? And because the Burmese were going to invade, and so the Thai covered over the Buddha to keep it safe. And one day, a monk discovers that there's a crack in the exterior kind of encasing of the Buddha, and this golden kind of presence is there. So delicately, they shine a flashlight there, and they begin to send a senior monk to gradually uncover all of the layers that were superimposed over this golden Buddha. Well, you know what, bro? We're all that golden Buddha. And it's time to take all of those layers that have been kind of laid on top of us and kind of projected onto us, and that we've accepted and that we've embraced as a normal, to be lifted off of us so that we can get back to who we really are.
Such an awesome message, man. Dude, it's been such a great interview, too, overall. Is there just a last send-off takeaway message you'd like to leave the Elite Man audience, and then a place our listeners can check out your book and your work?
I love you. I love you all. You just need to know that your value and your worth isn't tied up in your ability to produce. It's not tied up in your ability to take care of people. It's not tied up in external validation, what other people think about you. It's not tied up in your social media following. Just by virtue of the fact that you're here, you're hearing my voice, you matter, you're a blessing on this earth, and I love you. And that's what I want you to know. And
what's the link, the website there for the book?
You can go to the website, which is PANACHEDESAI.com. Get yourself a copy of You Are Enough. Dive into it. It's a wonderful book to be engaging with at this time. And also there's a whole bunch of resources there that are available to you. The global meditations at 9 a.m. Eastern every day. Join me. It's a wonderful free resource for everybody. Join thousands of people all over the world, discover the power of calm, and then also connect with living breath awareness and access that tool, because it's a very profound and powerful tool that's being utilized by some of the most influential people in the world.
Nice. Love it. Guys, make sure you check out his new book, You Are Enough. Man, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really do appreciate it. And I know our guys are going to love this one. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Justin.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. But before you go, there's one last thing I'd like you to do, and that's this. Subscribe to our podcast right now if you haven't already. By subscribing to the podcast, you get every single episode the minute they're released. Get all of our Elite Man podcast episodes and all of our world-class advice absolutely free. Subscribe now if you haven't already and become an Elite Man today. And yes, if you do love the podcast, leave us an amazing review. We really do appreciate it.